We are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, and we're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy. And the Bardic College of Content Creation, our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their game and help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. But one of the main ways we do that is actually by sitting down with folks who design those games and talking to them about their design process and experience around some of the projects that they're working on, and see what kind of lessons we can learn from that. Today we are sitting down with two of the creators from a project that is live on Kickstarter right now called Demiverse, and that is Ava and Rue. Let's go ahead and meet them. Ava, you want to tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
Yeah, my name is Ava. I mostly shitpost on the internet, but somehow in between that, I found the time to start making a game called Errant, which people are apparently interested in. You can read a preview of the rules for that at ttrpg.card with two R's.co. Yeah, if you want to fight with me on Twitter, you can find me at YoungDumbBitch, YUNGDUM bitch.
What if they don't want to fight with you? What if they just want to hang out?
Not allowed. I'm in a strictly enemies basis relationship right now.
To follow Ava is to fight Ava. Awesome. Let's meet Rue. Tell people who you are, what you do, and why don't you tell us a little bit about Demiverse also, too.
I'm Rue. I use he, they pronouns, and there's no proof that I'm not actually just 6 ravens in a trench coat. You can find me on Twitter as at IlanaKnight13. I am a tabletop game developer and also an admin for Heroes Without Limits, which is a tabletop channel and space by and for disabled and chronically ill tabletop players. So I'm one of our admins over there.
Awesome.
And I'm also one of the core writers on Demiverse, which is what we're here to talk about today, which is a play setting made up of dozens of demi-planes that were created when the multiverse shattered.
Awesome. For people who aren't familiar with the multiverse shattering, who missed that in the news, what is a demi-plane for people who may not be familiar with the idea?
Demi-planes are sort of like smaller planar structures, so like not a huge whole universe like you're used to, like the Forgotten Realms or Faerun or something like that, like a huge big D&D setting, but much smaller self-contained planes. And sort of one of our taglines is that the smallest one is a 5-foot by 5-foot dungeon tile, and the largest is only a couple of thousand square miles.
Awesome. So these spaces that you can kind of wander between rather than having these big expansive settings, kind of a set or collection of these things from the multiverse. I'm super excited to kind of come back and talk about that, but I want to learn a little bit more about each of y'all first, who you are, what you do, and also what got you into games. So Ava, I don't know if we've actually ever talked about this before. I think we have, like, happenstantially, but how did you get started playing role-playing games?
It's because, like, just as a kid, I was so there were two weird things about me. Well, not weird, but like one is that like I was just super into dragons as a kid, like really just like super obsessed with dragons. And two is that like my best friend in the world when I was like 10 years old was like a 35-year-old white dude who like did computer science and stuff. It's because when we moved to Australia, we were renting out a unit that was like adjoined to the house of the landlord who was renting it. The landlord was this like kindly old Italian woman who, like, my parents were both like new immigrants. They were working like 24/7. So I was basically at home by myself all the time. And so like she just like became my nonna. Like I called her my nonna. Like I was basically at her house all the time and we were just doing all this stuff together. And her son lived at home. I was a nerdy kid. He was a nerdy adult. He had a bunch of nerdy things. And so I was always like, I like dragons. And I'd heard of this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know what it was, but he had the books. And so like he gave me like a bunch of his old ones. And I would just like read those over and over. I had the Menser like red book from like the Beck Me set. There was like that was the one that has like a little tutorial, like play your own adventure. I remember re-rolling all of my stats until I got an 18 in strength, just over and over. And there's also like a character in there, Alicia. She's like a cleric, and you meet her and she dies, and there's like nothing you can do to save her, and that will always like made me so upset every single time. Yeah, and so then that was basically it. And then sometimes I would like tag along with his name was Nuns and hang out with his friends, and they would like play like 2E, I think it was. And so it was just like a bunch of like 30-year-old dudes and like one 10-year-old kid being like, yeah, I fucking swing my sword at the goblin. And that was like my intro to D&D. I like fell out of it for a bit after, you know, I moved and I was doing my own stuff for a while. And then I got back into it with 5e, and I eventually like discovered the OSR blogosphere, and that's sort of been like my niche ever since.
Awesome. I love it. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of some of your experiences in blogosphere, but Rue, same question. How did you get started playing role-playing games?
I am a recovering theater kid, in that I have a degree in theater, but I've done theater stuff since like middle school, and in high school, the like a handful of the theater kids that I knew also played D&D. Lord in high school, in that like I was like the dark fantasy, I want everything to be blood magic kind of person. And so I wanted to join their D&D game, and I wanted to play a blood sorcerer whose life goal was to become a lich, because that's what you want at 15, I guess. And the other 15-year-old who was GMing the game was like, no, you can't be a lich. It's illegal. Like, I think those might have been his exact words were like, no, it's illegal to be a lich. And so I got really like mad about that and left that game. And then from that point on was like, I'm going to GM my own games where everyone can be a lich if they want to. And then decided that like eventually I stopped being as much of an edgelord and didn't need to be a lich all the time. And then sort of expanded into other things. But I guess I got into GMing them specifically because I prefer GMing to playing. I got into GMing specifically out of spite.
Decriminalize and legalize phylacteries.
Yep.
I love that. I think that's a significant divide. I think there's a lot of people who say, oh, I'll do either one. I'll run games or I'll play games, but people definitely have a preference. And I think it's always interesting when people are like, oh, I prefer to run games. And I'm like, I know so many people who prefer to run over play. Like, I think there's a lot of freedom and fun in playing. But I think for a lot of people, that's a way better vibe. Ava, are you more of a, I like to play or I like to run?
I think I prefer running to playing, for sure.
Yeah. I go back and forth. At a home game, I love running, and I'm happy to run for like a year and a half, and then I want to take a 6 months break and not run. And whether that's just taking it off or just playing. And then I'm like, usually I'm like, no, I'm done with this now. I want to go back to running games also too. No, that's awesome. So, Ava, you were talking about you had gotten involved in the OSR kind of blogosphere, and you mentioned that kind of like the OSR kind of becoming your niche. Talk to me a little bit about what was attractive to you in that space, and also kind of maybe some of how that led you into some of the design work you've done.
Yeah, for sure. I think to me, I was just seeing the sort of like I found, you know, blogs like Patrick Stewart's False Machine, and other things like that were just like, to me, far and away, like the sort of like writing and the creative work and the settings that were like possible in there, like Against the Wicked City, were so much more like compelling and interesting to me than the things that like 5e, like the stuff that I was seeing in 5e was. And I think that's like what really attracted to me at first. And then I became like really enamored with sort of like the design principles, like the really kind of strong ethos that OSR games tend to have of like directing towards a very specific type of play experience, which wasn't something that like I had encountered before that, because my experience with sort of D&D and stuff before that was like more like, it's like you tell a story, you know, and that's like the most important thing. And I found the like focus on like the play of the game and like the challenge of it super appealing. And I think that's like kind of like where I've been hanging out ever since then, is like in trying to like create like meaningful design that creates like specific types of play experiences, rather than like trying to like create foundations for like narrative or anything like that.
Interesting. I love that. And you are often referred to oftentimes as somebody who is just a master of kind of these procedures and these other things that really focus on creating that level of challenge and play, but also give people the tools they need to navigate them. And I think Aaron's such a great example of that. But it's something that I always love getting to hear a little bit about what you have to say about how different pieces work together and how they kind of all knit in. Talk a little bit about how, like, what led up to the design of Aaron and how some of that love for those things may have manifested in the system.
I think for me, it was the fact that like, um, like for the longest time, my experience with the OSR was really just like an outsider looking in. I wasn't like part of the G plus community. I wasn't like having discussions. I had like my own blog, but I never updated it. So it was mostly, so I also like obviously wasn't part of people's games and like the play culture that was there. So a lot of it was me like, you know, like coming from like a 5e perspective, that sort of play culture, and really like like really like looking at these types of games that people were describing, where there was like challenge and things like light and encumbrance were meaningful, and people did dungeon crawls and hex crawls and all this sort of stuff, and looking at it and being like, I want to do that. Like I want my games to be like that, and really struggling, like really like not knowing how to do it. And so for me, I think Errant really came about as almost like sort of like investigations into like solving specific problems. Like because it wasn't like that I set out to design a game. I was running a game, and then I would encounter problems, and then I would think, how do I solve this? How do I figure this out? And I would do my research, and I would like think about it, and I would try to create some sort of structure for me that would solve the problem and like lead me towards the kind of game that I wanted to run. And essentially, like I just like did that over and over, until I felt like I had comprehensively solved most of the problems that would come up in the course of a normal game. And then I was like, oh, maybe I've got a new system here.
Awesome. I love it. I would encourage people to go check out Aaron if they have not yet, even though that's not what we're here to talk about today. I think you could actually absolutely crawl across the Demiverse using Aaron pretty easily also too. And so, Rue, how about you? So you were kind of obsessed with liches, and then eventually were like, maybe I don't have to. How did you end up kind of stepping into design and overcoming some of those edgelord tendencies?
Truthfully, I don't know how I overcame the edgelord tendencies, but I'm really glad that I did. If you knew me in high school, I'm sorry. Just straight up. Maybe moving out of where I used to live helped a lot, and getting into a place that was not where I used to be. But I really like world building, and like I'm really big into character driven narratives. So a lot of the work that I design, in terms of like not necessarily 5e stuff, but like personal stuff, is PBTA based, because I love that all of the mechanics are character based mechanics. There's not really like, it's not like D&D where every character has the same skills. I like the fact that in PBTA systems, characters tend to have individualized different skills, like that meaningfully affect gameplay. 5e, I always want to fix in that every subclass has lots of cool things for in combat, but when you're not in combat, those subclasses are useless. And so like I'm really big into making subclasses and making character options that are versatile and useful all the time, so that you actually feel like where things are going is in your control as a character. So that's sort of my like design philosophy, and like also my GMing philosophy. I'm really big into like letting my players and characters set the like beats of the story, and then I flesh them out for them. So that's kind of my design philosophy, is that like everything should sort of revolve around what the characters want, and less so what the universe demands.
Love it. I love that. I'm super excited to hear kind of what each of you have brought to this project. Now, I know that you're one of the primary contributors, correct?
Yeah, I am.
So can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how this project started kind of like growing and forming? Because I like, one of the things I love about it is the Kickstarter process itself is kind of like the uncovering of the Demiplane. Pieces are being unlocked through funding goals. The game's kind of initially funded, but you've been able to unlock some of these extra pieces like Ava's Hex that we'll talk about in a little bit. But tell us about some of the conceit of how this started to grow.
So at the start of the project, like Adam made sort of just like an open call for writer submissions. And I know he got something like 500 applications or something like that. And like picked, I think we have a total of 50 if we unlock all of the stretch goals. I think there are a total of 50 demiplanes that will be in the book. And sort of like, I'm not entirely sure his process of like determining the order of which those demiplanes are like in for stretch goals. But myself and 3 other writers were selected as sort of the like core team that would, no matter what happened with the book, like our demiplanes would be in it. So like we were working on our concepts and working with the artists before the like rest of the team got together and got pulled into the chat and things like that. And also before the Kickstarter got like started and things. And for me personally, it was super important to be able to talk to the other folks in the core team and also other folks who have been funded since. Because my demiplane is an interconnected one. So knowing what other demiplanes are present is super like important for mine so that I can reference them in my demiplane.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about your demiplane. What is it? You said it's this kind of crossing place, but tell us, is it the Grand Observatory? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us about the Grand Observatory.
It is the Grand Observatory. It is a wizard tower that perpendicularly bisects the Demiverse. It doesn't matter what direction your demiplane is tilted. The Grand Observatory intersects it perpendicularly because that's how demiplanes work. And the whole conceit of it is that it is an extremely tall tower, and every level has a window or a door that leads out into a different demiplane. And it is a research facility run by a tiefling wizard named Vellum, who is researching the Demiverse and trying to determine, because the rules of physics and the rules of magic are different in every demiplane. They want to find out what happens when you take magic or creatures from one demiplane and put them into another. And like essentially it's just a very large like research facility where Vellum and their associates are performing experiments to see what happens with the different like denizens of the demiplanes.
Awesome. Now I know that there's like some different like tags that each of the demiplanes have to kind of help people be able to navigate through them. So what are some of those for the Grand Observatory or other ones that people might experience in the book?
Tags. Could you
so like the origins and other things like that, some of the common things that you're going to experience as you go through the demiplanes, because like since yours intersects them. How about this? Let me ask the question in a completely different way. What are some of the things that you need to know about the other demiplanes since they interfere? Like, what are some of the things that you're looking to get from other creators to help you kind of be able to collate those into what you're doing?
Like the big thing for me is like what kinds of creatures are present only in your demiplane or like massively in your demiplane, or what is notably absent from your demiplane. So like if like for example, one of our stretch goals is a demiplane that's an entire plane of water. It is just like an endless depth of ocean. So that place has a lot of really interesting sea creatures and like deep sea life that scares me. But no like land plants and nothing that lives on land because there is none. And so sort of like the intrigue of like, well, what happens if we take a creature from the desert demiplane that hasn't seen water in a couple hundred years and put it into the land that is only water? What will happen? That sort of thing.
The answer was drowning the first 100 times, but we're going to keep on going until
we're trying again.
So no, that's awesome. I love that. And I love when there are these places in a multiplanar setting or in a Demiverse setting where there's like there is this kind of hey, like here's where you can get this kind of gazette or cross-planar action in a very specific type of flavor. And I think the Grand Observatory does that. You mentioned the art. I was able to pop some of it up on the screen as we were going. And it's an artist who I absolutely love. Actually, was talking to them, and that's one of the first ways I'd seen Adam's initial pitch, but I didn't know about the project itself kind of coalescing until I was talking to them. And I don't want to butcher their name, so I'm going to scroll down to it on the Kickstarter page. But
Salvatore,
yeah,
the hex artist.
yes, who has just done a phenomenal job of kind of bringing the different hexes and elements to life. It's just been really kind of cool to look through the different ones that are already unlocked, as well as some of the ones that are already coming, to see that I absolutely love their art. They do a ton of phenomenal hex work. If anybody's unfamiliar with their work, you should absolutely go check out the project, but you should also go check out their art and their hex work specifically, because it's just phenomenal. So Ava, how about you? You were one of the stretch goals that were unlocked. So your plane has been revealed and is going to happen. Tell us a little bit about what you're creating for Demiverse.
Yeah, so my plane is actually, hilariously enough, like the most edgelord plane, which is
everyone's a
funny.
lich.
I know. Everyone everyone worships like a lich queen. Essentially, it's just like it's called Carrion. It's like an endless city. It's basically like the Tim Burton Gotham, where like it's always nighttime and everything's shitty, and like there's always something in the alley, but like transported, back like 300 years to a more like industrial, like Victorian fantasy type thing. So it is it's primarily like a setting that I ran a home game in a few years ago, and it's a setting to me that's like primarily it was like another one of those things that I was doing where I was like investigating problems, where like I had like one campaign where I was like, this is the hex crawl campaign. We are going to do like it's going to be all hex crawling. And so with Carrion, when I was running it, my investigation was into like city crawls, urban adventures. I was like, the entire world is a city. The entire campaign world is a city. So how do we run that? And the focus for me became on like faction intrigue and sort of like the sort of like politics and ideology of that, because Carrion is really like Carrion's it's a setting in which like politics and religion are essentially like one and the same. Like it is ruled by a god queen, like the Maggot Queen, and like her ascendancy is tied in like whether it's like myth or history to an event that happened, that I guess like within the context of the Demiverse that the inhabitants think was like the creation myth of their world, of like the falling and of an older goddess called the Horned Mother. And then there is like this third, almost like third entity, the Cannibal God, who's the child of the Horned Mother, and they all each have their like different relationships, like religiously, but also like politically. They all like represent like different things, and those forces are like constantly in tension throughout the setting, and like exploring and navigating that is like the main sort of impetus of Carrion.
Cool. Awesome. I love it. Like I said, there's so much about the project that I love. And I know that the book itself is compatible with 5th edition and as well as Those Who Wander, which is by No Made Games, the publisher. Is kind of a system they did that was a 5e system that does a lot of very, very interesting stuff with like lineages, origins, backstories, other stuff like that. That was tremendous, that Adam launched. I don't remember time, end of last year, beginning of this year, one of the two, and that I think is just absolutely breathtakingly excellent. But here's what I want to talk about. So that exists, and if you're somebody who plays one of those two games, is absolutely going to be really easy for you. But one of the things I love about setting books, especially things like the Demiplane, is they leave a lot of flexibility no matter what system you're running in. So what I want to talk a little bit about is, Rue, you mentioned that you use PBTA. Ava, you love OSR, and you can talk about Aaron specifically or another system if you want to. I want to hear how y'all would use the Demiverse in your preferred system. Like, what would be some of the things that you would be looking at or thinking about or excited to do as you went into it? So Rue, like, like you mentioned, like you letting your players kind of set the beats and then you fill in the narrative after that. So if you were taking a group into the Demiverse, what would you want to do to start in kind of a PBTA mindset? How would you kind of engage in some of that?
Well, if I was going to take my players in, I would start in, actually, I don't know which number it is and if it's funded yet. Let me go check the page really fast. It is. The Derelict Station is another one of the like sort of demiplanes that exists to be a crossing point for other ones, and it is a train station with all sorts of different trains from like old style steam engines to like modern bullet trains that can take you across the Demiverse to different demiplanes. It's kind of like a grand central station of demiplanes. And I think a good place to start for me would be to like have characters arrive there so that they like and they can choose what train they want to get on and pick where they want to go. And also, like, if they wanted to, they could split up and explore different demiplanes by taking different trains, because splitting the party is fun, in my humble opinion. Yeah, so that would be where I would want to start. And I think a huge thing for me would be, rather than, because PBTA isn't full of checks in the same way that D&D is, rather than like every once in a while making my characters make a history or religion check to like see if they can determine what part of the multiverse this used to be, just sort of letting them interact with all of the elements and figure it out for themselves and sort of like really like dig their claws into the meat of whatever demiplane that they're in and like really get to like sink into the soil of it. Or not soil, I guess, if it's not a dirt plane.
It might literally be they're sinking their hands into the meat of it. Like that may actually be what's happening.
That might be it.
I love it. Ava, how about you? If you wanted to take the Demiverse and kind of flip it more into an OSR mindset, whether that's Errant or another system, what are some of the things that you would be looking to do or might really love to kind of lay on top of it?
Yeah, for sure. I think I would almost like take the opposite track, and I think I would like pick one of the Demiverses to start in that's like the most isolated from the rest of them. Something like Blackwood sounds good. And I would just like make sure that like whatever the players need is somewhere else. Like it like I want like I'm gonna like hone in on like whatever I will mostly like I mean like I like to create like I like to play with like like the main spaces that I like to play in is exploration. And I mean, the Demiverse is already well suited for that. Like it's a hex map. It's the classic sort of exploration format, and like resources and deprivation. So I would always start the characters like deprived and needing something and needing to go explore and to find what it is that they need. And wherever they go to, whatever they need, they will invariably need something else that is somewhere else. And through that, like sort of creating this like loop of exploration play.
I love it. Yeah, like I said, I think people oftentimes, you know, even when setting books are system agnostic or if they're system specific, like Spencer Campbell is funding the Slayer's Almanac right now, right,
Mm-hmm.
which has some beautiful hex maps in it, has a lot of other great stuff in it. Nothing in the Almanac is actually specific to Slayers, other than some of the a couple of the stat blocks, which are pretty easy overall to convert, right? You could pick it up and drop it into a 5e game and have 10 locations. Demiverse is the exact same thing, but you're looking at this interconnected series of planes, of demiplanes that you could travel across and have that same kind of exploration, or let people kind of sink their hands into, depending on whatever system you're using. So for setting books, I think it's also always really helpful to step back and say, look, whatever location this is, like I can bring the system I love or the style of play I love to this place and explore it in some different ways. And so I'm super excited about that. Now, I know that it has a list of the different ones that are currently funded. It looks like there are, at least at one of the things about Kickstarter is you always have to update graphics. So I didn't do any of the math to make sure the graphics are all up to date. If anything's been passed in the last little bit, that may very well be the case. But it looks like there are currently 11 of the 50 planes that are going to be unlocked. And roughly it seems like about every $1,000 for the next little bit there's another plane unlocking is kind of the way it's going to work. I don't know if you know Rue. Like, tell me a little bit about the process for that, because a lot of people, it's a very broad level of like that. You could end up with 50 planes. Y'all could have ended up with 5 planes, right? What was it like to maybe navigate some of the conversations, not knowing exactly how long the final version of the book is going to be?
I think it's a lot of like keeping in mind like your own like because so I didn't mention that also every demi plane is supposed to have a couple of doorways to other ones so that you can get between them. So like mine has doorways to like a lot of them, but every demi plane has some way to get from their demi plane to a different one. And so a lot of like real careful thinking of, okay, like I have a door in my demi plane to the 13th like demi plane, but if that one doesn't get funded, how quickly can I shift those vibes, shift that door into something that is already there? And so kind of this careful balance of like, because we're like as we get funded, we get the green light to begin writing. So like I've had the green light to begin writing for a couple of weeks, and I've gotten a fair amount of my like work done. But there are some things that I've referenced that haven't been funded yet. So I will have to, in like, if those don't get funded, like go in and like work around that. But personally, I'm going with the hope and the ideal that we will get all of them funded, mostly because I want to see all of them, but also because I don't want to rewrite anything.
I love it. No, like I said, I love how big the community around this project is. Like, I'm a big fan of inviting other voices in, giving people control over the systems and the spaces. There are things that you make and saying, here's a concept we want to invite a bunch of people to build around, and then empowering people to kind of put their own voice to that. And I absolutely love that this project does that on a tremendous amount of levels, like everybody having both their own Demiverse, but the wide range of voices that were invited into this was absolutely huge. Like, there are tons of people from tons of different parts of the RPG community, from tons of different life experiences and backgrounds that have all come together to kind of build in this same space. And I love seeing that. It's an incredibly diverse team. Some of the stats are on the site, but it's 72% women or non-binary, 78% LGBTQA+, 62% people of color or ethnic minorities, 26% physically disabled, 42% neurodiverse. Like, this great team that absolutely is bringing their own unique voices to the experience, and not in like, hey, we have the person on our page who we included for this reason, but a community that's really said these are our voices and we want to bring them forward. And I love seeing projects that are creating that space, and there's a number of them coming up on Kickstarter lately, but I love that the Demiverse is, I think, by far the biggest I've seen in that realm, like the largest group, like the largest team of people who have been brought together to do that. So I absolutely love that vision. What are some of the things, just as we kind of close out, that y'all are that you're most looking forward to? Like, I know that Rue, you said like, hey, you just want to see them all, but is there a plane or a part of this process that you're going through that you're looking forward to the most as y'all are kind of putting these pieces together?
In terms of like specific demi-planes that I'm excited about, there are the ones, Rosalind Chapman has one coming up. She's done Valiant Quest, which is like a really, really like such an underappreciated gem. It's like a great melding of sort of like OSR sensibilities with like a more of like a tactical miniature game combat feel, which I just adore. And Lex Verbrow, they are a great like 5e creator that does like awesome subclasses and stuff all the time. And I'm super excited. I really hope that we get to those people because I'm really excited to see what they put out. And like personally for me, in terms of like the process going forward, like I said, like Carrion is like a setting that like I have had and that I've like, ran before. And then there's like assumptions about that because, I was like running it in my own system, in my own game years before I knew about this project. So I'm interested in like going back there and revisiting it and then seeing like how it adapts and changes as it is now like recontextualized by being placed in this new setting amongst like all of these other settings, and like what that now like what different things emerge from the work now that it's in that context.
As we get Rue's answer, just a reminder, anybody who's out there watching, if you have questions that you want to ask, type them into the chat wherever you're watching. I should be able to see them. I would love to ask them on stream. If you've got a question about the Demiverse, go ahead and type them in and let us know. But Rue, how about you? Same question. Which ones are you looking forward to the most as far as other planes, and what are you looking forward to in the process?
So the one that I'm looking forward to the most, and I really hope it gets funded because it's one of the ones that I have put references to in mine, is Drakoniques on Twitter. Drax plane is called the microplane, and everything is like minuscule. When you enter the plane, you shrink down to like a microscopic size. And it also, like, one of the features of it is that magic is different at that size as well. And so it's kind of this weird sort of like microscopic wild magic plane that I'm really, really thrilled to see. And I also just really admire Drac as a tabletop community member and creator. So I'm really excited to like see where that goes. In terms of like the project as a whole, I'm really looking forward to like seeing how folks navigate between them, and like when we get our playtesters and things, seeing how folks feel about the transitions between like demiplane to demiplane, and how players feel about at one point being in Carrion and then at another point being in the mournful Dove Palace, which is an entirely different feel from city to city. And just like how people like interact with those spaces and how it feels to be part of such a sort of like fractured and interconnected space. So I can't wait to like hear feedback about that.
Awesome. That's awesome. We have two questions, and Paulino, I'm going to ask your question in just a second. But Blake Ryan came in a little bit late, wants to know, and I think we may finesse this question a little bit. Do all the characters come from Earth? Is it modern humans going elsewhere? It's a 5e setting, which would assume that then it's all the races characters from 5e, or could be used as a 5e setting, could be used as any other setting. Is there any built-in lore that kind of implies anything about the people, the time frame, anything else like that, or is it wherever you happen to drop it in, you happen to drop it in?
So I think like I don't like it's one of those things where it's like avoiding like strict canon, right? Like, and it can fit anywhere. But I think it being aimed to 5e players is like working based off like the sort of like shared lore and culture and expectations of that particular play community, right? Like when you say the multiverse in a D&D setting, it sort of implies specific things. Like, you know, you've always had like the 9 hells and like that clockwork plane where like those like little clockwork guys come from. I forget, you know, but there's like all
those little boys.
Yeah, the Modrons, you know.
Yeah, the Modrons.
And so it sort of, I think it's meant to apply that, you know, there was the multiverse sort of as you know it, whatever you conceptualize that as you know it was. There was the status quo, and this is what happens after that. And I think that like provides you opportunities to, you know, whatever you have, whatever your particular interpretation of the multiverse is, bring that in. But yeah,
it's D&D what if.
Basically, yeah.
I love it. But we have a couple questions generally along these lines, which are, which plane is the best or preferred to? Lena wants to know if this is an 18 plus stream, and then can they ask what the best plane to bang in is? And so if y'all have any thoughts on, you know, the best place for a romantic or erotic excursion in the Demiverse, people want to know.
I will say I can only speak for my plane, but horniness is strictly outlawed in Carrion.
So not Carrion.
Yeah,
not Carrion.
Well, maybe especially Carrion if you want the illicit thrill.
Ooh, there you go.
That is good.
Any thoughts, Rue?
Well, I haven't seen it yet because it's not unlocked yet, but one of them is called the Forest of the Dead. And as a goth who just took their engagement photos in a cemetery, I think that safely I would say that's probably going to be my best place to bang.
Awesome.
Not sure if it's recommended though.
Excellent.
Demiverse is that you can like add in, it can expand infinitely as much as you want. That's when you're playing it. So you can add the banging plane of your dreams, Lino. Can make that happen.
Lino's already working on the first third party demi plane. Um,
I mean,
uh,
the official D&D line does include the Book of Erotic Fantasy. That is part of the
Yeah.
multiverse, so it's there somewhere.
yeah,
It got fractured. It got blown up.
it's true. Similar but different over on YouTube. Cameron Fragment wants to know, which plane would you want to go to after you die?
Ooh. Rue, you can start this one. I'm gonna look through them and
I'm
think.
also reading. Well, one of them is called the Demi-plane of Relaxation. And I would love to relax at some point in my life ever. So if that has to be after I'm gone, then at least I will know that that once it's all over, I will get to relax. So I will go with the Demi-plane of Relaxation. Seems like a pretty good place to go after I'm gone.
Awesome.
You know what? I'm gonna say the Grand Observatory because you're just like never gonna get bored.
There you go. And then,
Always something interesting going on.
and whenever
I
third
feel
party,
like when I die, like I won't have my phone, so like I'm gonna need something.
Oh no, you're right.
maybe there's a Demiverse where like you go there and you just have your phone again, even if you're
That's
dead.
nice.
And so,
Is that? I don't know if that's heaven or hell. Like I don't
yeah.
know whether that's like punishment or reward.
You have your phone, but it only all the phrases you don't want to see are blocked on social media platforms.
Finally.
So, Michael Harmon says, was AD&D / Planescape or Spelljammer a big influence in this project? Does anybody know?
I can't speak for Adam, but it was one of the first things that I thought about seeing it. It is almost like it is like, because okay, like the best part of like Planescape is like this idea where it's like you have like these really cool concepts that make up the center, and then you can kind of like put everything else in it. And the worst part of Planescape is like the AD&D-ness of it all, where like there's like 30 sentences of a minutia about every single fucking back alley that you could possibly go into. And so I think this like really captures a lot of that like appeal of like Planescape, without getting like bogged down in like a lot of like what makes it difficult at times.
And then Blake Ryan wants to know, and I think this is a great question for Rue. Do animals or plants migrate across the hexes? Like you talked about some of the ways that the people in the observatory that Vellum takes animals from one, but have we seen any sort of cross Demiverse migration through some of the different pathways and other things through?
Like it is something that they are capable of, like in the same way that a player character could open a doorway and go between plane to plane. But I think sort of like in a evolutionary, we're not suited to be here kind of way, it results in a lot of like discord. I almost said discourse.
Sometimes.
A lot of like discord, in that like you've got creatures and monsters and plants in places that maybe they're not supposed to be. But I think it leads to those like sort of like I forget the word for them, like crossover zones, like in like real like human environments where it's like the edge of a desert and a grassland, and you see that middle zone, and you can like see the like two demiplanes kind of bleeding together out around the like portals that lead between them.
Love that. Michael Harmon says, just as a curiosity, have y'all read any Michael Moorcock, like Elric, Stormbringer, Quorum? Yeah. So, people are excited. Awesome. So the project has about a week left to go. Like we said, it's already funded. You guys are pretty close. It looks like unlocking your next goal. I'm going to scroll down, see where we're at. Specifically, yeah. So y'all are a little bit under $1,000 from unlocking your next goal, which is going to be I could be pronouncing this any number of wrong ways. Cathad,
I think, yeah.
Asha, we've got some of the other ones kind of queued up here. They would hope to. If you haven't gone to back the project yet, this is an excellent time to do it. Obviously, lots of projects going to bump in the last 48 hours, but there's no reason to wait to the last 48 hours. And again, we want to remind people always that backing a project at any level always helps support the creators. It also lets people know who follow you on social media or on Kickstarter that project exists. So it's a great thing to do if you're able to help support this project. We love a lot of the things that are coming out of No Made Games, but I love a lot of the contributors that they've drawn together for this. Is my first time hanging out with Rue, but folks know that we have Ava on stream fairly regular. We're big fans of the work that Ava does, and was super excited when I think Ava just got asked if she could do an interview, and then got dropped into a chat with me and was like, "Oh, it's just Tony." And I thought it was somebody important.
I didn't say it was just
No,
Tony.
you didn't say it was just Tony. It was really fun. We're like, yeah, I'll drop the contributors in, and I was like, oh, it's Ava. And so but it's been very, very cool to see the project, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to see how many they can unlock. I actually need to hop on after this and go back, and also too, there's a digital version for folks. You can also get the physical version. You can also get some of the other games that Adam has made in the past. So if you want to use those to play through, you can grab all of those things at once. I'd really pay attention to all of the creators that are a part of this project, and the work that Adam is doing also too, specifically who wanted to be with us today but couldn't because of an inescapable obligation. So Ava and Ruth, thank you all so much for coming on. Always happy to have each of you back individually to talk about other projects and the design work you do. Did you just shake your head no? Like, no, I'm not coming back.
For sure.
I saw it go side to side like this.
No.
Why do you think I'm like constantly negging you, Tony? Where did this
I actually don't ever think that you're negging me, which I don't know why I'm so blessed to just fly underneath the neg radar. But I love every interaction we ever have, actually. So but so if people want to find you, Rue, where's the best place for them to find you?
The easiest place to find me is on Twitter at IlanaKnight13, or you can see the games that I write independently when I'm not working on bigger projects at ilanaknight.itch.io.
Awesome. And Ava, people want to find you, and Michael wants to know if pre-orders are up for Errant also too.
They are pinned. The link is pinned in my on my Twitter page. So that's at Young Dumb Bitch, YUNGDUM bitch. And yeah, apart from that, I mean, if you want to go directly to the pre-order page, it's at killjester.com. I have a blog which I blog at infrequently at permacrandam.blogspot.com, as in short for permanent cranial damage. And yeah, those are the best places to find me.
Awesome. If you want to help support our channel, the best place you can do is follow us on social media at +1EXP across all platforms except for weirdly Twitch and Itch. The didn't get that same name. Those are Tony +1. You can also become a content champion over on Ko-fi at kofi.com/+1EXP, which helps us continue to pay our team and do all the great things that we need to do to make sure that the channel stays operational. So it's a great place to help go support us. There's some other advantages there also too. But the thing we would love to have you do more than anything else is go over and check out Demiverse. Give it a look, back it at any level that you can. And if you can't back it at any level, share it with somebody who might. Go to your GM and say, hey, I really want to play in this universe. Take me there, right? And see if they'll support the game if you can't. And so I would 100% also make sure you're hitting follow for both of these great folks, as well as for Adam and the team over at No Made Games. With that said, this has been Prestige Class with Ava and Rue talking about Demiverse project that's live on Kickstarter right now, and class is dismissed. Boop. Bye, everybody.